Today we're going to look at the new show SMILF,
the return of the girlfriend experience,
and the new Margaret Atwood drama Alias Grace.
Cheers to Margaret Atwood books on the small screen under her eye.
You're so literary. And thanks to our host Vinyl in New York City. All right, Jess, let's talk TV. What do you do when you're a hot young mom with a young baby and a sex drive and no man? You're a SMILF, where the S stands for single. What you do? Well, that's complicated. Sometimes you're trying to get your swerve on while your baby is in the bed beside you. Very awkward. Actress Frankie Shaw takes us inside the world of the SMILF in a dramatic sitcom that she wrote, directs, and stars in called SMILF, where Rosie O'Donnell plays her mom. The show airs on Sundays at 10 on Showtime.
Sometimes you still act like a kid.
I don't mean to.
I know, it's okay, honey. You'll be you, okay?
You're like my best friend. You know, for a tutor. I gotta be a role model.
Can you pass me the knife? Here you go.
I need Larry to see you kick some butt.
Who has big balls?
I do!
We should do this another time when he's not around.
He's always there.
And I just love this show right away from the first moments. She is winning and smart and fun, and it's not over the top funny, it's sort of a dramatic sitcom. And so I feel the challenges of her world and this mom trying to get some and just be in this flow of life. And, you know, when she fails, it's funny, and when she kind of has somebody interested, it's kind of funny. And you're not gonna laugh out loud every moment, but I'm just completely drawn in. I love this character. I wanna see her succeed. I wanna see where she goes.
Yeah, Frankie Shaw is such a talent, and I think that some of those smaller moments are the moments where I thought, I am all in on this. I am invested in this. Like when her baby's asleep and she's like, I really have the munch. She's like, I really need something to eat. So she's like, all right, I'm gonna sprint to the store. I'm gonna get myself some snacks. And then there's like the slow person in line in front of her, and she's like, keep it moving, you know, she's gotta get home. Like those little moments that I think are so, it's like, oh, if you've been a mom, if you are a mom, like you get that moment.
She's trying to fool around with the guy, and then the baby's foot pops out, and the guy's like, whoa!
I'm out, yeah.
This is like, no, strip away all the prettiness, and like, let's just get real here.
Yeah.
And like, she just had a baby, life is hard, like, go.
It's also the portrait of a working class mom in, you know, outside of Boston. It's not, it doesn't have that kind of flashiness of New York City and, you know, of Brooklyn or of even Los Angeles. She's trying to be an actress. There's a great scene where she goes on an audition and her baby's there and she's just trying to nail this scene, but she's got to bring her kid with her because guess what? That's her reality. So it feels different from things that we've seen before. I will say, and I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this, I know that Rosie O'Donnell playing her mom, like that was supposed to be a big moment. That's the one part of the show that I'm not connecting to. I don't buy their bond and I don't buy their relationship. I feel like the strength of this show is with her and her kid, or her and her ex, or her and her ex's new girlfriend.
I love Rosie. I love Rosie in this, and I haven't always loved Rosie O'Donnell. I loved her on The View, but not on this, whatever.
Right.
But you know, so I'm not always all in for Rosie. I think she's fantastic in this. I think she brings a sort of realness, like a hard-edged realness with the potential to be funny, but just like, you know, it's Rosie O'Donnell. She's like, I'm gonna just keep it real, you know, and like there's no screwing around here, you know, and I love her for that. I love her for this. I mean, I think like a sort of salt of the earth grandmother trying to scrape by in Southie, you know, near Boston. I believe her. I like their connection. I thought it was a great idea that she is here. I thought it was a great idea that Connie Britton.
Oh, Connie Britton is so good in this.
So good and so clueless, and like, you know, the rich person who has no idea that they're super offensive. I think they were both like super well cast and just sort of great additions to this whole little universe.
Yeah, I mean, I love the scenes with Connie Britton. I love seeing the two of them together without spoiling too much of what's coming up, because we have seen a few episodes. You know, there is some real tough moments coming up. But watching this very rich, you know, affluent woman just try and be condescending and friendly, and it's so uncomfortable. And I think Connie Britton really nails that unlikable character, especially because you think of her as like Tammy Taylor, like she's the most likable person on the planet, and then she is horrifying in this.
I'm super binging SMILF, I loved it. It's fun, it's smart, and I want to see where this goes.
I do too. I mean, there are some moments that I'm not totally sold on, but I'm definitely going to binge it because I believe in her. I think she's a great talent. I mean, I'm definitely rooting for this show.
Coming up next, we'll talk about the CBS comedy Mom.
And the new show, Alias Grace.
Welcome back, I'm Touré.
I'm Jessica Shaw.
And this is BingeWorthy.
We tell you what to binge.
And what to delete.
The sitcom Mom, which stars Anna Faris and Allison Janney, just returned for a 5th season, and it looks like we're heading toward the we've run out of every other storyline, so let's do a wedding kind of season. The comedy, it's so good, right?
Oh
it's total
God.
season 5. It's
Yeah.
always season 5. The comedy airs Thursdays at 9 on CBS.
You are looking at the biggest idiot on the planet.
Yep, there you are.
Look what I did.
You said yes?
Don't make me relive it.
Okay.
I love him so much. Why don't I want to marry him?
Because deep down inside, you think you're not good enough?
That's what Marjorie said.
I think Allison Janney is a national treasure. She's gonna get an Oscar nomination this year for I, Tonya. Loved her in Masters of Sex, obviously The West Wing. But this show is it's not good enough for her. I mean, it's not good enough for her. It's not good enough for Anna Faris. I wish they could take the premise of this show, these two recovering alcoholics, this fraught mother-daughter relationship, and move it to cable so it didn't have the cheesiness of a multicam CBS sitcom.
Maybe the problem is CBS, because you and I struggle to think of anything on CBS that we watch outside of like 60 Minutes and NFL football.
I mean, I like Young Sheldon.
I mean, that's a personal problem. But like, there's this formulaic nature to like all these shows. There's two people together who don't really fit together, but they're stuck in the house together, and there's corny canned jokes and the laugh track, and I cringe through every moment of it. It's like this show could have been made 25 years ago, put on the television with no problem and no change. And maybe you don't have 25 years ago alcoholics in recovery together and being open about it. Maybe it would be like secretive or like a subtext. But I mean, like, this is the old era of television.
They actually got away in this season 5 premiere with a masturbation joke, and Allison Janney walks out and she's like, "I think you better masturbate while I'm gone." And as I watched it, that is a joke that wouldn't think twice about if I saw that on Showtime or HBO or on a streaming service. And yet on CBS, there is a moment of like, you know what? Good for you for getting away with that joke. Good for you that standards and practices didn't stop you.
The Tiffany network let their hair down a little bit.
Right, but it didn't feel like enough. It almost felt like their ability to get away with that joke was the bigger story than the joke itself. And that's how it feels.
I'm totally deleting this.
I know. I'm sad to say I'm deleting this too. I'd rather go watch old episodes of West Wing. CJ forever. Another Margaret Atwood adaptation has come to the small screen on the heels of The Handmaid's Tale. This time it's a historical drama, Alias Grace, about an Irish domestic servant accused of murder. It's written by Sarah Polley and directed by American Psycho director Mary Herron, and it's now streaming on Netflix.
Very deep within her, the knowledge is there.
Knowledge of guilt or of innocence.
That I am cunning and devious. How can I be all these different things at once?
You're very curious for such a young person.
Murderous is a strong word to have attached to you. Murderer is merely brutal. I'd rather be a murderess than a murderer, if those were the only choices.
I love this show so much. I was crazy about Handmaid's Tale. We both were.
I love Handmaid's Tale.
It was just absolutely brilliant. And this show takes another Margaret Atwood book that is so much more intimate. And the way Mary Herron, who, of course, did American Psycho and I Shot Andy Warhol, she shoots the scenes of this show in such close-up. It is very disturbing and unsettling to watch. And it's just essentially a psychologist interviewing this woman, Grace, about what happened and did she or did she not murder someone else under her roof.
I mean, I loved Handmaid's Tale, one of the best shows of the year, if not the best show of the year. But so much of what I loved about it was the political underpinnings and the resistance and the oppression and the normalization of oppression and repression. And this is like Handmaids with none of that and just a very close focus on the women and their lives. In the first 30 or so minutes, I was into it. I liked the character they were setting up. I liked the world they were setting up. It is visually beautiful. And then it sort of dropped off this cliff. It became like so just minutely about like this woman's world that I could not follow them into. And then I was like, did my kid like hit a button and suddenly I'm watching Downton Abbey when I thought I was watching Alias Grace and I can't tell the difference between this and Downton Abbey?
So many bonnets.
Right, I was like, no, I'm just not interested in being in this world and so much knitting and just like,
She sits there, she sews through every interview. It's so unsettling. I think that there's whereas Handmaid's Tale is so big and it's so grand and there's this almost army of handmaids and there's so many bigger implications of that. This takes all of that harrowing misogyny and just brings it to such a small scale world. The scope is so much smaller, and yet it's still addressing issues of gender and power and what a woman's role is and how women are treated and subjugated. And I thought it was so unsettling, maybe even more so than Handmaids, because you really just can focus in on this one woman and what she endured.
I mean, look, Handmaids is it's a nightmare. It's a horror story, right? It's a political horror story, right? And that just had me I mean, I'm like, why am I watching this right before I go to bed? I'm gonna have nightmares. This, I don't know. It was like a knitting show gone wrong with great dialogue.
Oh my gosh.
I can't. I
love
can't
this.
do it. It's just so, like Handmaids gave us all this political vision of this whole world that Margaret Atwood had created, and this sort of pushes through to like, okay, what if we only see the female domestic servants, right? And the teeniness of their world. And I was like, I understand politically valuable. I understand some people will like this. I cannot follow with this anymore.
I love this. I feel like Sarah Polley is such an interesting filmmaker. I mean, she produced it, she wrote the scripts. I think that she brings such an interesting perspective. And yes, it is not something that happens larger in society, but that's partially the point. Because the domestic servant, the Irish immigrant domestic servant, is so just not relevant in the greater, scope of things, of the story of what was going on. She's so dismissed. She's so beside the point that that's almost, that sets you up for what she's going to endure over the course of her life. Also, it's a true story, which makes it even creepier.
I mean, I found a lot of interest from she killed or was part of killing somebody.
She's accused of killing, right.
And there's great flashbacks to that, and she becomes this curiosity in this world. It's like a woman who's killed. So a lot of that was unsettling in a good way, and looking back to what she did was unsettling in a valuable way artistically.
Right.
But just as a whole tableau, I was not.
You weren't.
Or a whole quilt. When you stitch the quilt together, I didn't want to.
It wasn't one of the 3 quilts she says a woman should knit at one point in her life.
Oh God, yeah. See, that's what I'm talking about. What are the 3 quilts that a woman should knit? A box stitch and this one, and I'm like,
I loved it
with this whole conversation.
I loved it. The whole time I'm sitting there and I'm just like drinking my wine and I'm like, this is. I was basically It was. I was like, oh my God, this is so riveting, and it gets better and better. And bonus, it's 6 episodes. I feel like I am so done with 13 episode seasons. Good for Sarah Polley for saying this is a tight 6 episodes, and that's where I'm telling my story. And it is strong, and it is powerful, and it is gripping, and it's 6 hours.
I'm super deleting this. And I went into Alias Grace with high hopes. Margaret Atwood, Netflix. This sounds great. I made it through 2 episodes. I can't do a 3rd. I can't. I'm deleting Alias Grace, but I will tell my wife you might like this, honey.
I binged this like crazy. This was another example of a Netflix show. I like Mindhunter, like Stranger Things. This is my latest Netflix show that just over the course of a weekend, binged the whole thing. I loved this show so deeply, and I'm recommending it to everyone.
Coming up, we'll discuss season 2 of The Girlfriend Experience.
And we'll give our pick for the performance of the week.
Welcome back, I'm Touré.
I'm Jessica Shaw.
And this is BingeWorthy. We tell you what to binge.
And what to delete.
And do not delete the Steven Soderbergh produced drama, The Girlfriend Experience, which is back for a second season on Starz. It airs Sundays at 9.
Do you know who I am? Yes.
Well, if bribery helps destroy people's faith in the government, you have my support.
I want you to do something for me.
I know exactly what you're capable of. We're gonna give you a chance to start with a clean slate.
You have to lie to a lot of people about who you are.
I found this sort of interesting and winning and sort of grabbing me in, even though there's a harshness to this whole thing in this world. And I mean, part of why I generally don't watch porn is because I am immediately dragged to these people have had horrible lives, and it takes me out of watching the actual porn. And this gives me that, but because it's fictional, it doesn't bother me.
I just found it so cold and so austere. I mean, everything from the acting to the setting to the wardrobe, it was so harsh. And I actually found it difficult to watch because it was actually challenging to try and invest in the lives of these characters when it was so cold. But it takes me out of it, and I understand why they do it. On some level, it is a nod to the coldness of sex work or to the lack of human connection to it.
It's also very Soderbergh. That's kind of what he does, right? It fits with his general aesthetic.
I mean, which one did you like? One did you like more? I feel like these are two wildly different stories. And
I like the story of the prostitute more.
I actually like the other one more. I like the story of the woman in the witness protection program. I thought that was just. I was more intrigued by her story, by what landed her there, by what actually happened, by how was she going to reinvent herself in the context of where she is now. What's her relationship going to be with her kind of handler, this guy who is tasked with keeping her safe? That was the story I found myself more compelled by.
This gives us more from the perspective of the prostitutes, right? And who a little bit more of who they really are, and not an entirety of who they really are, which would probably be very difficult for a lot of people to watch, but they are more complex than prostitutes are usually able and allowed to be on screen. And I found it really sort of compelling, and again, it allows me to watch without getting dragged down in this person had a horrible life, and how can you be watching them?
Yeah, I know. For me, it felt more like this is a really interesting experiment to run two stories of sex workers side by side. They will not intersect over the course of the season, and just it felt almost like, like I was really stepping back and watching someone's art thesis or someone's film thesis on some level, as opposed to when I watch TV, which is maybe just a personal thing. I want to be so engaged that I feel like I am immersed in this life, whether it's This Is Us or whatever it is.
I'm engaged by the coldness of this world. I feel like it just redirects me away from getting titillated by there's prostitutes and they're having sex into following the world rather than the distraction, rather than the shiny object. You know what I mean? But I will be following them on their journey. I will be binging this show. I like it. I'm not gonna be calling or tweeting all my friends and telling them you gotta watch GFE, but if it comes on, I tell them, yeah, stick with it.
Yeah, this show was just left me too cold. I'm going to delete this show.
Performance of the week goes to William H. Macy in the latest episode of Shameless.
Where the hell you been? In mourning and meditation after the death of your mother. Acceptance, resurrection, enlightenment. And we have to deny the existence of a permanent entity that remains constant behind the changing corporal or incorporeal components of a living being. All things are in a constant state of flux. All is changing, and no permanent state exists by itself.
You talk about a national treasure. William H. Macy is a national treasure. I mean, what a thoughtful, when he pulls the tooth out, right? And it's this crazy moment, but not too crazy, right? And he plays it just pitch perfectly. I love him.
It's one of those shows, Shameless, that I don't keep up with it, I'm embarrassed to say, but when I do watch it, it's to see him. He is so good, and you think about over the course of his career, the kind of characters that he's played, and they are truly all over the place, but you watch him on Shameless, and he looks like he is having such a blast. He goes all in on this character, and he is like, he's like walking around in his, you know, like sheet, and he is just apologizing to everyone in town, and he's a total disaster, but he sells it, and I love watching him.
No, nothing is probably more fun for a great actor than playing a mess.
Yes.
And playing it in the right sort of way, and like, oh, finally this week we're talking about a man. That's it for our show. Thanks for watching.
I'm Jessica Shaw.
I'm Touré, and this has been BingeWorthy.
Cheers to season 8 of Shameless and women everywhere.